Hello, everyone, and welcome into this week's edition of the Coaches Report. I'm your host, Victor Herrera, and today we have Coach Gipe of the University of Richmond men's basketball team. How are you doing today, Coach Gipe?
Doing great, Victor. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, no problem, Coach. First of all, how's the weather over there? Because we're still in the 90s down here in Texas, so
Yeah,
it's still
it's
hot.
beautiful. One of my favorite parts of living in Richmond is the fall weather. It's feels like fall in the morning when you walk the dog, but it stays in the 70s pretty much till November, so it's great.
Oh man, I think my wife that'd be music to her ears.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, Coach, to kind of dive on in, I'll give a little people of your background. You're the assistant coach at University of Richmond Spiders men's basketball program, and you're one of the youngest in the Atlantic 10. Congratulations, by the way. That's
Thank you.
huge. Um, Kind of walk me through it, Coach. How did you fall in love with basketball? Was that the sport you always kind of leaned towards? And kind of just walk me down memory lane.
Yeah, so I was born in Richmond. My dad was in seminary to be a minister. We left Richmond when I was 8 months old, moved to Wise County, Virginia, and just was around basketball from a very young age. My granddad played at the University of Tennessee. My family just always had basketball on. It was kind of a passion between, my dad and my uncle. And, unfortunately, my granddad passed away when I was less than a year old. But, that was kind of a bonding point of pretty much that whole side of the family. So that was pretty cool. Played in high school, went to a small high school, so played 3 sports in high school, but was the worst at basketball, but enjoyed it. And then I knew I wanted to be involved in college basketball, knew I wasn't good enough to play in college. So someone kind of introduced me to the concept of being a student manager. And so as soon as I got to Virginia Tech, started as a student manager my first month in college, did that for 1 year for Coach Seth Greenberg, 2 years for Coach James Johnson, and then Coach Buzz Williams got hired the spring I was graduating from college. And so Coach Williams was kind enough to keep me on as a graduate assistant. And so I worked for 3 head coaches in 5 years without moving. So that was, a lot of really unique and good perspectives to have at such a young age. I almost heard, one of my regrets is that I didn't soak it up even more, just that those are 3 different, head coaches with different backgrounds and styles of play and how they do everything. So I was very fortunate to get kind of a crash course from those 3 and had a connection from when I worked with Coach Williams. He was already on staff at Richmond. So he got me connected with Coach Mooney, been at Richmond now entering my 8th year at Richmond. So was video coordinator for 3 years, director of ops for 3 years, and this will be my 2nd year as an assistant coach.
That is a long track record for very few years lived on this earth. Coach, one thing I'm honestly very interested in learning and kind of just hearing how you went about it. Usually, players, if they don't play in college, they feel like that's the end of being able to do anything in college athletics. You didn't play in college. What kind of pushed you to take that step? Did you reach out to the coach at the time at Virginia Tech to be a manager and kind of work your way up, or kind of what was through that thought process at that time?
Yeah, so I reached out to the administrative assistant in the basketball coach's office, and she hit me back right away, put me in touch with the head manager, sat down and talked with, I think the manager crew probably had 6 or 8 people on staff at that time. Was fortunate they took me in right away. Learned a lot from them as well. And, when I first enrolled in college, I thought I really wanted to be a high school coach and teacher, and maybe that'll still happen one day. But, as soon as I got working with the program, I fell in love with every aspect of it. Just how much time the guys are with the coaches, how much they're in the gym on their own, recruiting, building a program, all those types of things. It's really hard to do in high school because, kids are in class all day and they play other sports. And, for some kids, it's just not as important. And, I just loved, obviously being in the ACC and, just the players in the league at that time were unreal. And, just seeing the commitment of everybody in the league, I just loved it.
Were you intimidated at all kind of going in?
A little bit. I was a little bit. I was from a small town.
Mm.
A lot of uh, new faces to be around every day. But very thankful. The video coordinator, John Janowski, who still works in college basketball at NC State right now, was very welcoming. Kind of took me under his wing the first year, which was great. A couple other guys that were managers at the time that are no longer working in college basketball, but were super gracious and helpful, right from the jump, which was great.
Going through that process, was there like an interview that you had to do your first year kind of going in, or to, I guess, show you had some basketball knowledge?
Yeah, I don't think they're looking so much for somebody who can help with the coaching, right? I mean, they have a
Mhm.
full staff of coaches who have made it to the Atlantic Coast Conference. I think they were looking more so for eager young people that are, willing to do laundry and sweep the floor and be pour into the program however they could. And I was really excited to do that. I was really excited to just be around the program. And it wasn't really so much a, hey, show how much you know in the first interview, but more so, hey, show us, as time goes on, how much you can help the program. I think it was kind of like a working interview for, a month or two, just to make sure I was, not just trying to show up for the games for a front row seat and, skipping out on all the typical manager duties just to get the Nike gear and sit front row. But, I think even from my freshman year till now, I think my favorite part in terms of the program is I love just the daily practice, watching guys get better, watching how you install certain things, to your base offense, to special situations, to, handling wins and losses and, those types of things. I was really intrigued with that early on. And so that kind of drew me to wanting to be there just every day. I really enjoyed being at practice. I really enjoyed hearing how the coaches taught, how they talk to the players to build relationships, outside of X's and O's. I thought, which I think is about as important as anything.
Absolutely. One thing I do kind of want to talk about, touch on real quick, is you talked about how you went in kind of with the ambition of high school teaching and coaching.
Mhm.
When you realized how much fun you were having, because I mean, it has to be fun for you to want to do it. When you realize how awesome it was for you as an experience, did teaching and the high school side take a back seat and like real early, or was it later on that you're like, I kind of want to just stay at this college level?
Yeah, I think you got to keep all your options open, right?
Mhm.
I tell people, I talk to a good amount of student managers about getting into coaching because they see, that I started as a manager and they have some questions. The biggest thing I talk to them about is just be as involved with grassroots as you can, high school, AAU, basketball, because building those connections are really going to help you either A, getting an assistant coaching job, or, B, they're just going to help you build relationships with kids, that you may see in college basketball or maybe on your team 10 years from now. And, I think I had the most cookie cutter path, student manager to grad assistant to video to ops to assistant. But, I always wanted to keep my options open. I still took all the classes in college to be a high school history teacher and, kept that in the back of my mind. But I would say I definitely pursued, full steam ahead being a college coach and, was very fortunate. I was dating my now wife at the time and she was super supportive throughout the whole process.
It's always easier when you have that somebody that's supportive.
It's not easier. It's needed. It's
Oh,
needed.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Coach, we talk about a lot of other coaches, like specifically high school coaches that we've had that did umpiring before they went into coaching, and they can kind of see the other side of the way things are done. But you having had done so many different roles, how beneficial has that been for you where you're at now and where you want to eventually be?
I think the thing that helps the most starting as a student manager is just it just for lack of a better way of putting it, it just puts you in your place right away,
Mhm.
right? Like you're not celebrated within the program as a superstar player. And so I think it really taught me right away that the most important thing are the guys on the team. How talented are they? Are they getting better? Are they succeeding on and off the court? And I think being a manager, you're doing that right away, right? You're helping with laundry, you're helping with, logistics on the road, you're helping with practice. You're just trying to help the guys manage an overwhelming, physical and mental daily schedule. And I think that's where being a manager really helped me the most. Was just it just taught me right away the most important thing in your program are the guys succeeding.
Absolutely. What now I kind of want to go into your role now as an
Mhm.
assistant coach for the University of Richmond. You know, being an assistant coach, you're not celebrated as much as you should be because you got to have a strong core to be able to keep a well-oiled machine going. Kind of what have you noticed being your biggest challenges jumping from director of ops to that next step as an assistant coach?
Yeah, I would say, going back to what I said about it's great if you can be involved with high school and grassroots while you're in college and while you're young. The toughest thing for me right out of the gate was just, I was fortunate the rules kind of changed right before I became an assistant on, being able to contact people and in terms of recruiting. But I think it was tough hitting the ground running, trying to build a network. You're recruiting against people that have been in the business for 30 years. They know everybody in specific regions. No matter where you turn, there's people like that are recruiting certain regions. So I think that was certainly tough. uh, but it's what I enjoy the most about being in coaching, is being on the road and building relationships and all that kind of stuff. In terms of, on the court, I would say just, there's a lot of, I guess you would say, public speaking in front of your team that you don't do when you're a director of operations, that you do when you're an assistant. I'm very fortunate. Coach Mooney puts his assistants in that position. That's not the same at every program,
Mhm.
but we certainly have a voice, especially when it comes to scouting. And it's like doing a full presentation, every time you have the scout. And you can prepare as much as you want, but until you do that, under the pressure of, you know where your team's at in the season, and knowing in the back of your mind what certain games mean, until you get that experience, you can't really replicate it.
Yes, and one thing, like, as an assistant, I've talked to a few, and they say, like, "Well, you kinda gotta know where your place is. You gotta know your role. You can't speak up and step on too many toes, but you also wanna make sure that if you can help the team, you wanna help the team." And I you kind of answered it, but, does Coach Mooney allow the assistants that opportunity? "Hey, you see something, say something."
Yeah, he does for sure. And something that was difficult for our staff, you know, Richmond basketball in particular, was, I was bumped up to assistant coach, and then the other two assistant coaching spots going into last year were filled by guys who weren't on the staff the year before. So now Coach Peter Thomas played for Coach Mooney, and had worked as director of operations and had been at Campbell, and they do a lot of things similar to Richmond. And David Boyden had connections and familiarity with the program, but it was certainly learning on the fly between the three of us of, hey, who's kind of best at what? How do we help each other out? How do we all three together help coach out? Those types of things kind of had to be learned on the fly. And then when coach had his health issue, later in the year, it really exemplified that. And I thought we did a good job of coming together on it, and just, doing whatever we could to help the team succeed. But that was certainly another big challenge and learning experience. Was just like, it wasn't like I hopped into being an assistant at Richmond with two guys who had been assistants at Richmond for 20 years. And, I was just, had time to just kind of figure it out. Like we were all kind of learning on the fly together.
And kind of going back to, I guess, piggybacking on how you're talking about like that Richmond style and needing to kind of bring it together. Do you find yourself in positions where, even as an assistant, you got to continue to push through to your athletes, like, this is our style of basketball, this is our culture? Like, as an assistant, do you find yourself in them positions?
I think when players first get here, it's no matter where you are, there are certain, principles both in teaching and how you play that kind of have to be instilled. I think that's relieved a little bit by the fact that you kind of recruit to, your principles and how you want to play, right? This is kind of every program in the country. I think Coach has a great program built on trust. He's entering year 19 as a head coach. So, it's a situation where a lot of the older guys know what's expected. And, so a lot of that teaching to the younger guys is done by the older guys, which is great. And, Coach isn't a big micromanager of their time. He certainly has high expectations and, pushes them and asks a lot out of them. But at the same time, I think there's a high level of respect between him and his players. And, it's just our job to reinforce that. Jacob Gilliard, Grant Golden, Nathan Ko, Nick Sherrod, all those guys coming back for 5th and 6th years, like that doesn't happen unless they have full, not only trust, but, love and support for Coach.
And, Coach Gipe, one thing I definitely got to get into on this podcast, and that's because you've landed some big time recruits. And I'm just curious. You don't have to tell me where the honey hole is or anything, but kind of, have you, in this young career that you've been doing this, have you already kind of found like regions that you prefer over the other? Have you already kind of been like, hey, this one produces a little bit more?
Well, I think what's great about Richmond is two things. One, as a school, we recruit pretty nationally, not just athletics, but as a school, a little tough on the West Coast just because there's so many schools in the WCC with kind of the same profile as Richmond, which are obviously a lot closer to home. But, Coach Mooney's had great players from Texas and the Deep South and, the Midwest and the Northeast and New England and Virginia. So, that being able to recruit pretty much nationally is a great place to start. And then I think the second thing that's a big help is in recruiting, you're either selling a vision or you're selling a product, right? So what I mean by that is the vision is, a new coach gets a job and you say, hey, this is where we see you, we're trying to build it. This is what it could be. Our facilities don't look great yet, but when we get this thing rolling, this is what we're doing, or you have a product, which is, hey, Coach Mooney's been here 19 years. There's been a lot of guys with your skill set that have succeeded. Let's show you film on that. Let's show you their stats. This is our practice facility. This is how we travel. This is, this is what campus looks like. This is the academic profile of Richmond. So I think it's really just selling what Coach has done here, and the longevity of that is huge. I think, especially, a lot of parents really respect that with what's going on with the transfer portal. We've had a couple guys that, we recruited out of the portal that their head coach got let go or moved on. And, it was really critical to them that Coach had been here for so long, because they just said, man, there's going to be, the last thing we want to do is our son having to transfer to a third school, and so that stability is huge. So I think the biggest thing is, the product that we have to sell with Coach, and we work at a great place that's committed to basketball and, has, donors that are fully invested and a president and athletic director that are super supportive. And, you'll see them courtside at every game. And, just the culmination of all those things, that makes, it's all about what you have to sell,
Mm.
and sometimes certain kids are looking for certain things that aren't what Richmond is, but I think we're also very honest with what Richmond is. If you don't want to go to class and you want to take all online classes, then this isn't the place for you. That you can't hide academically here. And
Mhm.
we want guys that hold themselves accountable and want that challenge because they want also a really good degree. We're not going to take guys that are a really good 3-point specialist or a really good rebounder and just want to get on the floor in that role and don't want to expand their game. Coach is going to coach a 6'7", rebounding versatile forward, like a guard. He wants
Mhm.
them to be able to dribble and pass and make decisions and all those things. And if you don't want to be, that sounds great in the recruiting process, but when you're asked to do all those things in practice and you're not great at them, like you're gonna get called out for it. And
Mhm.
if you don't want that, then this isn't the place for you. But I think the positives of coach's track record and what Richmond has to offer and the people invested in the program, I mean, it far, far outweighs, you know, hurdles.
Mhm. When you find a kid that catches your eye, has that pop to them, or however you wanna say it, who's the first call to? Is it to the parents, or is it to, like, a coach? Is it, like, you wanna know more about the kid? How do you go about it?
That's a good question. I would say my first call is usually to the kid, like a day or two later. A
Okay.
lot of time now that I'm starting to build a network, a lot of times I'll hear about certain kids from a coach or from high school scout. So, I really like to talk to the kid first, see how they are, see what's important to them. Like I said, if you're recruiting a kid from the Midwest and, I'm on, if they're not from, Virginia or Maryland or Carolina, right away I'm asking them, hey, is being close to home important to you? Because I don't want to waste your time and, you don't want to waste my time. And so, I want to have those, upfront conversations with them. And then, I want to talk to them about, okay, well, who's important to you in your life? Who do you live with? Those types of things. And, I want to respect them in making sure I'm talking to people that are important to them relationally and not transactionally, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, that does make sense. I mean, you don't wanna put forth the effort on a person, and then it if you would've just asked the hard questions to begin with, would would have been brought to an end real
Mhm.
quick with questions like that. I'm also very curious, when you do finally get to meet a person in an athlete in person, have you ever ran into an instance where that may have changed your perception? Like maybe, hey, like they were different on the phone versus how they are in person?
I wouldn't say initially off the first conversation. Maybe more so with their game.
Mm,
Oh man, they look good on highlights, and then you see them in person. That changes a little bit. Honestly, I run into there are more red flags with the parents than there are
mm,
kids. Just because with the whole transfer portal situation, Coach Mooney's big on recruiting freshmen, and we're going to do it with freshmen and transfers. Try to have a good mix of both with a majority high school kids, and the reality is if that's important to me too. Sniffing out early, like okay, well, if this kid's not going to play, right away, 30 minutes a game, are he and his parents going to be an issue about transferring? And some of those things you can't control, but at the same time, like some some parents, especially some dads, will show their hand right away of, they certainly think their son is very capable, and sometimes too, there's a little bit again, like people are looking for what they're looking for. If all that matters to you is playing in the ACC or the Big East, like good for you. Hopefully you get those offers. But, if I'm recruiting you now, you probably don't at this time. But, if that's what you're set on, then great. That's what you want. And, there are plenty other really good players that fit Richmond, and recognize that, Richmond can go toe to toe in a lot of ways with those programs.
Absolutely, coach. One thing I kind of want to expand on is the parent situation. Have as a parent, what could you say would be most helpful for the kid? Not necessarily red flags, but what can a parent do for their kid if they have ambition on playing in any college sports?
Yeah, I would say that, so much of recruiting now is, social media is intertwined, and I'm not saying that's all bad, right?
Mhm.
Somebody asked me the other day, does it bother you when a kid tweets out every time they get an offer? And I said, no, not really, because, I'm keeping up with 20 different kids. Like, it's hard to remember who got offers from where. So that makes it easy to keep up with. But I think what I would advise a parent is just keep pouring into your kid that's not really what matters. Like, I don't
Mhm.
care if people do that, but like, really continue to look at, okay, well, what are 3 or 4 things that are really, really important to you? Okay. Is it level? Is it style of play? Is it playing early in your career? Is it academics? Is it location? Is it public school, private school? Okay. There's a million things you could prioritize. Let's get down to 3 or 4. And then, if there's schools that don't match that, then don't waste, you're just gonna get caught up in what they have to say,
Mhm.
right? And you're just going to start to believe what they hear, and then it's just going to get you sidetracked from who you really are and what you really want. So I think, as a parent, just continuing to, obviously as an adult, you have experiences your child doesn't, but, just continuing to gently remind them, hey, this is what is and should be important to you.
And then I guess on the other side of the flip of the coin, I gotta say though, I've never heard it worded that way, but I absolutely love it because I wish
Did you?
I would have been told that information when I was going through the process. Uh, as far as like when you do talk with coaches, well, what are some things coaches need to keep in mind if they're trying to help a young athlete?
Like high school and AAU coaches?
Yes, sir.
That's a really good question. Uh, I think along similar lines, right?
Mm,
I think that sometimes it just becomes about the recruitment more than about the decision.
mhm.
And, now part of that is a kid's a borderline Division I player. You're pressing as hard as you can for, all the recruitment you can get. Or, if you're set on going high major and you don't have those offers yet, like, yeah, that's what you got to do, is really brand it and push it until that happens. But I think just continuing to echo, like, you know first off, being a Division I or even a college athlete is a big deal, and, a blessing. And, you know just prioritizing what's important to you, and just trying to relay to them the experiences, because a lot of high school and AAU coaches did play in college,
Mhm.
or wanted to play in college. And, just echoing to the kid, hey, well, here's some of the experiences I had or I noticed, and this is why it worked or this is why it didn't work.
Absolutely. Real quick, Coach Guy, while we wind this interview down and get to the final couple of questions, I do have a question about Richmond basketball this season,
Mhm.
and I'm just very curious. What is the most exciting thing you're looking forward to?
Well, I think we got a lot of guys that can help us. It's very interesting. A lot of people ask me, how do we look relative to the Atlantic 10? And that's really hard to answer, because not only was there a lot of movement on our team, there was a lot of
Mhm.
movement across the league, players in and players out. And so it's really hard to tell at this time. I'm most excited about the fact that uh, we have a group that's great to be around on a day-to-day basis. They bring a lot of energy to practice. They really, we have older guys that came in. We have older guys that returned, and they all really want to be good as a team. They don't have, obviously they have individual goals, but it's about the team being good. I think we have a really talented freshman class that could be really good, and they had recruiting accolades, but at the same time they're super coachable, and that's not always the case. And there are days they get frustrated, but they're certainly bought in, and they're certainly giving their best day in day out, which is really not easy this time of year as a freshman. So I would just say just the enthusiasm this team has for being together and working hard. Like, this is a team that, if you're going to hit adversity during every season, like, this is a team that I think could handle that really well.
If you had to describe the team in one word, which one would it be?
On the court, I would say fast. We have some really quick guards that are experienced, that can really pressure the ball on both ends of the court, or I'm sorry, defensively, and then, can make plays in transition, can make plays out of ball screens. We've got some, I think we're going to play some lineups that, maybe a little bit smaller at the forward spot, but very fast. And, I think we'll be able to throw in a lot of different things offensively and defensively to keep people on their toes. And yeah.
Well, it sounds exciting. Coach, I always, in my interviews with this last question before I give you a chance to have the mic, and I feel like gratitude is something we all take for granted. We don't realize how many things we come across in a day to be grateful for. And so I'm just curious, Coach, what are 3 things that you're grateful for today?
Oh man, that's well, 2 of them I'll say I'm very grateful for every day. One is my wife, Amber Gipe. 2 is my dog, who I'm very excited to go see as soon as we get off this call. And 3 is the opportunity just to talk to you today. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate the opportunity to help anybody that's, getting into coaching or a manager. If you ever want to reach out to me, my email's on the Richmond website. Always happy to help. I certainly wouldn't be in the position I'm in without the help of a lot of people that, when I was a manager working camps, in the summer, that really took me under their wing and, taught me different things and gave me different advice. So, I appreciate, you just having the space, trying to help younger coaches out.
Hey, no problem, Coach. That's what it's all for. I feel everybody can learn something from everybody.
Yeah, no doubt.
This is my chance where I just kind of give you the mic. So, like, if there's anything you want to say, Coach Gipe, go right ahead. You can talk about Richmond. You can talk about whatever you'd like.
Well, like I said, I really appreciate you having me on. I feel like we talk. I'll just try to wrap up kind of all the things we touched on. For young coaches out there, it's a long journey. There's going to be times you really feel frustrated or it's not worth it, and maybe going in a different direction is the right way for you. But, if you really feel passionate about it, like, you gotta understand it's a long journey, and, I would say the rewards outweigh some of, the fallbacks you'll have. I think that's the biggest thing is, understanding that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And the other biggest thing is there's no right or wrong way to do it as a young coach. Like I said, I had the most cookie cutter path possible. A lot of times I feel like my journey would have been easier to this point if I had been super tied in with AAU, or with a certain high school or a certain region of the country. And, that's not always the best way either. And so I think you just have to really be comfortable in this business and who you are, whether that's, a great basketball mind or a recruiter or a relationship builder or, just a really hard worker. I think you got to be comfortable in who you are and also, try to embrace, getting better at what you're not, because, I think that's a great way to help your head coach too, is just by trying to be as versatile as you can in what they may need.
Yeah, well, once again, Coach Gipe, I appreciate you, and we'll be keeping up with Richmond Spider basketball this year. It's exciting. I've seen some of y'all games the past couple of years since I've been a part of Legacy Maker, and I wish I could see some in person. So maybe one day.
That's
You
great.
know,
Well, we love to have you up anytime. We'll have you sit right behind the bench, in the family section, which is always entertaining. So, but really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can help some people out.
yes, sir. Well, you have a good one, Coach Gipe, and good
All right.
luck this
Thanks
season.
for your time.